This is News Talk 1590 KBTA. I'm Lynn Fairley, and I welcome you back to my show. All right, this happens to be the highest team IQ in noon radio because it's me and Spence, or it's Spence and me, rather, chopping it up today. And here's going to be the topic. What do Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Du Bois, Albert Einstein, and Tolstoy all have in common? Well, you'll find out when we come back after this song that Mr. IQ picked. Forgot it was so low. Yeah, you probably heard me say I forgot this song was so la-la. It really is. I was looking kind of more for a protest song because we have probably half of the female, more probably, of Ventura County, half the female population of Ventura County out marching down in Los Angeles. And that's joining all the rest of the ladies in the nation, doing the same thing across the nation. That's something that, of course, is our freedom. And there's a big difference, however, between protesting and rioting. Spence, do you know what the difference is?
One doesn't involve broken glass and things on fire.
Exactly. And if you do riot, did you know it is a federal crime and a felony? So you can protest all you want, but you start to riot and then it's a felony. So careful, ladies. All right, so as I said, this is the highest team IQ in noon radio. A little joke there on the highest team IQ in our new cabinet. And we have some firsts here, some first inaugurations. In 1801, who was the first person inaugurated in D.C.?
The first person inaugurated in
D.C. 1801.
1801, so wait, let me do the math, 79. 87. I'll say Madison.
Oh, close. Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, that too early. Wow.
And his was the very first speech to be reprinted in any newspaper.
The third president.
Yep. First to be sworn in on the Capitol steps in 1829.
Okay, now we're going further down the line, so I will say if that is Harrison.
Andrew Jackson.
Okay, the seventh president was Andrew Jackson. I went with the ninth.
No, you're very, very close. Last to wear a hat. Now you're going to get this one. And this is the traditional stovetop hat that was worn through all inaugurations. Look it up. The very last person to wear it in 1961 was...
Oh, the last person to wear a hat?
A stovetop hat, the traditional stovetop hat.
Did we have Kennedy and
You're
a
right.
hat?
Boom. Yes, we did. 1961.
Really? It's funny. All the times I've seen the photo, I just don't recall a hat.
Yep. Stovetop hat.
That's a great question.
And in 1961, the very first inaugural poet, at the age of 87, was Robert Frost, and he recited The Gift outright at 87 years of age. All right, now go back to that first inauguration in D.C. The very first parade was in 1805, and it was for whose second inauguration?
Second inauguration in 1805. Okay, now I'm going to do math again. Jefferson.
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yes, because he was the first inauguration in D.C. Exactly right. So Jefferson also got the first parade 4 years later.
Bam.
All right. In 1809, who do you think the first inaugural ball? This is the first ever inaugural ball. Who do you think?
Because his wife knew how to throw a party, I'm going to go with Madison.
You're exactly right. All right. How much do you think the ticket price was?
I would say through StubHub or just regular. I would say it probably cost you $10.
Oh, no, a lot less. 4, which is such a weird amount. 4, not 5. 4. All right, here's a little tidbit on the White House. It was called the Starter House. While the nation's new capital city was under construction, a well-appointed brick mansion in the acting capital of Philadelphia at that time was put at President Washington's disposal. and maybe that the city of brotherly love hoped their hospitality could entice the president to make the town his permanent residence. Though both George Washington and John Adams lived at this alternative accommodation, Congress's determination to move the capital to the Potomac River meant that D.C. would be the final resting place of the White House. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that the original Stata House was over there in Philadelphia. All kinds of cool little tidbits popped up this week because last Wednesday, or I think actually it was Thursday, I posted a very simple question on my Facebook page, Lynn Fairley, Lyn, and then Fairley as it sounds, Fairly. Check it out. I posted up one simple question. Would you attend the inauguration? If so, why? And if not, why not? Oh my gosh, it blew up. It was hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of comments and debates and arguments and fair points and really, really interesting. There was so much energy. There were so many people who participated in it, and it went well into the evening and all the way up to the morning of the inauguration. And people with their yay or their nay, and it was fairly equal actually. And I tried to stay in the middle as the moderator, but it was the first time my page blew up that much, and I thought, gee, that's just such a simple question. So, Spence, would you have attended this inauguration?
Absolutely, it's history. I would attend anybody's inauguration.
You know, in the end, that's what a lot of people that's where it all landed in the middle. You know, there was a lot of people out on the right and a lot of people, the heck no side of it. It was a little stronger language than that. And then it all landed in the middle of why would you want to miss history? Yeah, that's how I felt about it too, by the way. Okay, a couple other tidbits that came from Facebook while I was going through that. In case you missed it, this is kind of amazing, really, because such a narrow vote. In case you missed it, the Senate voted 51 to 48 the other day to end coverage for pre-existing conditions, end coverage for veterans' benefits, and aid to rural hospitals. The Senate voted to remove discrimination protection for women in health care, against the provision allowing children to remain on their parents' insurance until the age of 26. They voted against that too. To cut off funding for the Child Health Insurance Program, against the Obamacare Act or the Affordable Care Act contraceptive coverage and maternity care provision, against to direct committees to send budget legislation to defund and repeal the Affordable Care Act. Actually, no, to direct committees to send budget legislation. They voted for that. For those who get health insurance at their work, no pre-existing conditions. Lifetime caps for coverage are back now for everyone. Real and disastrous actions are being taken that will affect more than just the 20 to 30 million people who will lose their health care coverage and the 3 million people who may lose their jobs. Despite their assertions of this being an action to repeal and replace, no viable alternative plan has actually been proposed yet. The House voted Friday, last Friday. And as of this moment, no replacement exists for all of that. So for those who are worried about this Obamacare coverage for themselves and their families, Senator Warren's staff said that they would help the most, what would help the most would be to call the 5 Republican senators who have broken away from the GOP to demand a slowdown of this repeal. Tell them how much you appreciate their efforts to stop this train wreck and share your story. So I have all those phone numbers. If anybody wants them, and I'll post them up on my Facebook page, and that's Lynn Fairley. You'll be able to find each and every one of those people and give them a call. Now, that they've repealed all this is one thing. That they're planning to replace it, yes, they are, but I wonder when and how soon. So, check your coverage before you go to your doctor, because who knows? Everything just could be up in the air, and I'm sure these insurance companies don't have a clue as to how to handle this either. And if you're already paid your premium for the next, 6 months or a year, or maybe your boss has, I wonder if they have to honor that. Not sure. So these are the kind of questions that I'm going to try and research and find out. Spence, do you know anything about this?
I just know that through the last 4 years, my insurance has skyrocketed. So they've got to do something about it. The Obamacare did not work for me.
Yeah, Yes, and for so many other people too. And so it'll be interesting to see what they replace it with, because I guess it did work for some, but for most, I don't think it did. And then what was there? This $2,000 fine that they would take right out of your taxes if you didn't sign up for it? And that was ludicrous as well. So I guess the tax code has to be changed. It's nuts. So if you want to participate in any of this, did it work for you? Or not? Do you have insurance? Do you need it? Do you have any ideas of what they could replace it with? 805-650-1590 or post it up on Facebook. Here's another thing you need to know, because all this sort of happens, this inauguration and all this hoopla and all these arguments and these protests and the marches and what have you, they kind of overshadow some of the stuff that's happening. So this is how come I wanted to let you know that actually passed in the Senate. Okay, so here's something else that you may not know. Trump immediately fired all the ambassadors and special envoys, ordering them out by Inauguration Day. So all ambassadors and special envoys, bye-bye. House brings back the Holman rule, allowing them to reduce an individual civil service position or a political appointee's salary to only $1, effectively firing them by amendment to any piece of legislation. We now know why they want their names and positions of people in the energy and state, don't we? Okay. Spence, I think you took a call.
It was something about Obamacare that I have to look up.
Oh, okay.
They had a fact, but they weren't sure if it was true. So
that's awesome that they called. Who called? Do we want to say thank you for calling?
It was Patty.
Patty, thank you so very much for calling. Spencer, you're going to try and look that up while we're chopping it up here?
I will make an effort.
Thank you. All right. The other thing you may not know is Senate schedules 6 simultaneous hearings on cabinet nominees, and then triple books these hearings with Trump's first press conference in months and an Affordable Care Act budget vote, effectively preventing any concentrated coverage or protests. So the press isn't going to be able to get in and get any information on these hearings of cabinet nominees. And by the way, he has 4,000 positions to appoint, not just the top 10 that you hear about that he claims have the highest IQ. Okay. House GOP expressly forbids the Congressional Budget Office for reporting or tracking any costs related to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Trump continues to throw the intelligence community under the bus, despite the growing mountain of evidence that perhaps the Russians deliberately interfered in our election. And then I think he was going to drop by and say hello and kind of say, hi, how are you doing this weekend or possibly Monday morning to mend fences, apparently. Then he breaks a central campaign promise to make Mexico to pay for the wall by asking Congress, in other words, you, the taxpayer, to pay for it. Trump threatens Toyota over a new plant that was never coming to the U.S., nor will take jobs out of the U.S. And number 8, the House passes the REINS Act, giving them veto power over any rules enacted by any federal agency or department, for example, the FDA or APA, that bans a drug or a pesticide, a pharmaceutical drug or a pesticide. So Congress can now overrule based on lobbyists, not science. You don't like that endangered species designation? Oh, well, Congress will kill it. So these are some of the things that happened sort of under the radar while all this other inauguration hoopla was going on. It's amazing how many changes happened really literally overnight. I mean, within minutes of his inauguration, the entire White House website was completely wiped out and replaced by his own. So if you try and find the tab that used to be there about civil liberties regarding, the gay community, for example, and or climate change, or actually they used to call it global warming, nope, not there. So you will not find anything on gay rights or climate change on the brand new White House website. It is gonzo. And Spence mentioned something interesting right before we started the show, and that would have been interesting to see if Obama would have gotten away with that, wiping out Bush's website.
I didn't say that. I said, do we know that he didn't?
Do we know that he didn't? I'm sorry.
That's different.
Sorry,
than
that's
the
way,
other one.
way, way different. Right. It's a good question. I don't know, but it's amazing to me how quickly Trump just wiped out the other one, and it was up within seconds after his inauguration. I don't know. Maybe that is something they do now with social media, but then social media wasn't as prominent. Let's say Bush Senior, who's been hospitalized. Do you know if he and Barbara Bush are out of the hospital yet? Have you heard?
I do not.
You know, I wonder if Bush Senior would have had to wipe out, or Clinton wiped out his, for example. I don't know how far back social media really was involved with all of this, but boy, has it exploded. Twitter becoming one of the most amazing. It just precedents were set with this campaign. Who would have thought that our campaign would be Twitter-driven? Absolutely amazing. And so on that point, I also found some other stuff online I wanted to share, and in certain periodicals that I read, one of which was written by a political campaign reporter, Katie Gluick, called Social Media Mayhem, to the point of Twitter. Was Twitter an angry bird during this campaign? Perhaps. In 2016 presidential contest, candidates drove the news cycle for days with just one single tweet. Donald Trump, whose constant, often unfiltered stream of musings delighted his supporters and vexed other members of his party. He was at the forefront of this phenomenon, but his opponents also prioritized social media as a key piece of their messaging strategies. Quote, "Delete your account," Hillary Clinton tweeted at Trump last June. Well, needless to say, that just put him on fire. Certainly, there were dark sides to the platform's central role in the race. Not only did the Twitter-fueled tempo further reduce the time available for thoughtful reporting, the medium also elevated bigoted supporters of several of the candidates, giving voice to their hateful messages. I have many friends and colleagues who faced racist, anti-Semitic, and sexist online assaults and even threats from Twitter trolls. Trump and to a lesser extent Bernie Sanders felt pressure to condemn these attacks. Another example of how Twitter was inextricably linked to the campaign and to the coverage of it. And I think this is going to continue for a very long time. I think Twitter and whatever morphs from Twitter in the future, maybe even Snapchat, chat I think is how that's called, Snapchat, will become a part of our campaign. Imagine that. And yet, it turned out Twitter could be a surprisingly supportive platform for those of us on the cutthroat campaign trail. When this writer was on the Ted Cruz beat before moving on to the general election, reporters from rival publications would tweet out one another's stories and give credit to the competitors. Twitter offered a platform for camaraderie and instant communication, too. Even journalists who barely knew each other would exchange direct messages in airports, sending alerts when airlines were calling their names, warning that our flight to New Hampshire was about to take off with us, etc. And if I tweeted something observational or off the cuff and it blew up, I would take the turn as an encouragement to make it into something a lot bigger. Quote, "This is unreal," I posted from a Texas delegation breakfast on the morning after Cruz at the Republican convention refused to endorse Trump. Quote, "Texas delegates crying, literally pointing fingers at each other, calling each other cowards," end quote. Her phone immediately began vibrating with retweets, which is a sign that there's interest in the story and that she should file it really fast. And minutes later, her piece on Cruz appeared on Politico with details of the morning's drama. So still, she tried not to let the conventional wisdom of the Twitterverse influence her coverage too heavily, but who could help it in this new era, not putting stock in Twitter? And so she quietly celebrated the milestone she reached during the election's final weeks of 10,000 followers and counting now. So there's to the point of how Twitter, like she said, very, very much was inextricably linked to the campaign. Without Twitter, do you think news was a whole lot slower and a whole lot truer? What do you think, Spence, about this whole Twitter
People probably
movement?
said the same thing about radio.
Oh, that's interesting. Back when, let's see, we're talking about how long ago? When did radio start to influence the? That's another first.
20s or so.
Yeah, you think? I'll be darned. Can you think of someone from the 20s that was a really brazen journalist, or even up to
Well, there's
more
yellow
recently?
journalism in the newspapers.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
sure.
false.
Right.
So we had the yellow boy of journalism. So it's always happened.
That's interesting. And in my hot little hand, I hold a piece of history here. The New Yorker, speaking of journalism, magazine dated October 31st, 2016. So Halloween was how many days prior to the election? Handful, right? First, second, third, fourth, right? And the editor of this magazine writes, this just is mind-boggling. Okay, in the talk of the town, the New Yorker is a very popular magazine. Page 31, which is why I'm going to keep it for history's sake. All right? This is October 31st. The editor of the New Yorker writes, on November 8th, barring some astonishment, the people of the United States will, after 240 years, send a woman to the White House. First sentence in the New Yorker. He's sure. He's so sure. And the election of Hillary Clinton is an event that we will welcome for its immense historical importance and greet with indescribable relief. How about that for a little piece of history here? Now, he had to backtrack and backtrack and backtrack. And is what is so common with the New Yorker. And they're famous for these, too. They're amazing cartoons. On the very front of the New Yorker is a picture of, oh my gosh, was it Thomas who swore them in? Kennedy swore them in. Justice, who swore in Trump? Trump. I should know this. Who was the justice that?
Roberts.
Roberts,
is the
thank you.
Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you.
That's where we are now. Yes,
right,
yes, Mr.
Right.
Mr. Roberts would be the one.
Right, Justice Roberts. There's a cartoon of him swearing in Hillary Clinton with Bill Clinton in the middle, and then the second half of the front cover is Justice Roberts swearing in Trump with Putin in the middle, holding a Bible. So they seem to be still, I don't know, considering the idea that Trump might on the front cover, but no, in the middle of this magazine, he states quite clearly he's positive Hillary will be. And up to that late in the campaign, up to the 31st, they're still thinking Hillary had it in the bag. So again, what was the psychology? How did everybody miss this? Do you have a take on that?
I think USC and the LA Times had a poll that did say that Trump could win. And the biggest thing is, and just in my humble opinion, is that the Democratic Party blew it on what they call the blue wall. They didn't go to the right states. They didn't hit Wisconsin. They didn't hit Pennsylvania enough and Michigan enough. They lost each one of those states. Again, I'm going off the top here. From memory, by 1% per state. Perhaps one drive-through would have flipped those and that. And they didn't even need all three states. I think they needed Pennsylvania and Michigan, and the election's different. Boom, just like that. By 1% in each state. They were traditionally, they call it the blue wall because they're traditionally blue states, and she lost all three of those.
I'll be darned. That's really amazing. And yet, here we have, I don't know, maybe a few million or tens of million of women today out marching and protesting. That's how we started the show, right here in L.A. on our sunny day.
Yeah, we have about 3,000 in the park here in Ventura.
Do we really?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. It's all over Facebook.
Well, that's remarkable to me. And I heard that it was the women that she counted on who didn't vote for her. So that's shocking, ladies. You're out there protesting and marching.
The blue state, California did. You know, people here can't vote in Wisconsin.
Sure. Right. No, of course.
So here they did what they were supposed to do, and Hillary won this state. So I don't think we can blame the women of this state, but I think we do have to go to some of the others and say what happened.
No, I'm talking about women nationwide today protesting and marching. What happened to you all at the voting polls? And Hillary was counting on that. The female vote.
She didn't go to Wisconsin.
That's it. It's all in the cheese. Yeah. Whoops. Where's the cheese? Or who stole my cheese? Wasn't that a book?
Who moved my cheese?
Who moved my cheese? Well, her cheese was moved in a big way. But, you know, kudos for her to attend that inauguration and be so, I don't know, glad-handed and smiling and all that to the camera. She did put on her happy face the other day, didn't she? Did you watch the inauguration?
I heard it because I was here.
Oh, yes, of course you were here. And is that what you guys have been talking about, or is this just like old news?
We've, talked about it a lot, certainly. But in the morning show, we tend to go a little lighter. But we have bounced it around a bit. Yes, and certainly Rush to Hannity to Mr. Elder. They've been talking about it for 9 hours.
Mr. Elder's a really nice addition to our lineup in the afternoon. Larry Elder's always been a wonderful orator. I like Larry, and I've followed him on I think 870 is where he used to be. So that's wonderful that he's on KVTA News Talk Radio 1590. At this time in my show, I do take a break, and we start that with the Shoemaker Brothers, because I like to thank someone who's been in the service and give you a couple of other announcements of what's going on here.
Fell in love with a dancing girl. Fell so hard that it rocked my world. Headed off to a place in Iraq, and that man that she loved.
All right, just the other day, January 5th, 2017, after more than 43 years of service to our country, United States Marine Corps Colonel Edmund J. Bowen retired during a solemn ceremonial tribute hosted recently in Washington, D.C. At the time of his retirement, Colonel Bowen was the longest active U.S. Marine on duty. Can you imagine serving our country for 43 years? So he must have was probably drafted at 18, but 43 years. He had combat, and this was like boots on the ground type stuff, the real deal, this Marine. His past combat assignments included Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Restore Hope, Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom. He was all over the Ikistans, which is what I like to call them, Afghanistan, Somalia, Africa, all those. Graduate of Marine Corps Engineering School, Amphibious Warfare School. I didn't even know there was Amphibious Warfare School. Advanced Logistics Officer Course, Marine Corps Command and Staff College, and the Air War College. Held a Bachelor of Science degree in Management from Linfield College and a Master of Military Studies in the Marine Corps University. So that's all he's ever done for his entire life. Decorations included the Legion of Merit, Gold Star in lieu of a second award, Bronze Star Medal, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Oak Leaf Cluster, Meritorious Service Medal, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, and 2 gold stars, and on, and the very hard to achieve Combat Action Ribbon. So there you go. That's remarkable to me. Thank you very much, Colonel Edmund J. Bowen, for 43 years of your service, and thank you to your family as well. All right, this made me really sad. Did you ever drive through that tunnel tree?
I have not. Never drove through it.
You know which one I mean, though.
Yeah.
That magnificent tree that stood. It was an ancient tree which had a living tunnel carved into it 137 years ago. That's when the tunnel was carved into it. Was felled by an intense winter storm in California, Calaveras Big Tree State Park on Sunday, according to the San Francisco Gate.com. Park volunteer Jim Alday reported that the iconic Pioneer Cabin Sequoia, which is thought to be more than 1,000 years old and is one of the handful of tunneled through sequoias in that state, did not survive this powerful storm. We've got the tail end of that storm coming, I think. Alday told sfgate.com that the tree shattered when it hit the ground. This iconic and still living tree, the tunnel tree, enchanted many, many visitors in California, from all over the world, really, and the storm was just too much for it. Tunnel trees were made in the 19th century to inspire tourism, NPR reported, by making it easy for horses and automobiles to drive through them. The park eventually closed off this Pioneer Cabin tree to cars, but hikers were still allowed to go through it. I was kind of sad because I remember driving through that as a kid. It was a huge big deal to go all the way up there and drive through that. And you know it if you've been living in California. You probably drove through it. So speaking of gardens, please support the Ventura Botanical Gardens. They're so amazing. Right behind City Hall is the start of the trail. And it's changing all the time. There's constant installations of benches and stone walls and irrigation for that matter. And they're starting on the South African garden. The Chilean garden is pretty much done. It's a wonderful hike. It's free to the public. Thousands of people use it every single month, and it's going to be a world-class garden. 100 years from now, it's going to really be a world-class garden when it's all grown up. But you can participate in it. You can volunteer. You can plant plants. You can move stones. You can weed. But definitely hike. So on February 4th and February 16th, 10 a.m. on the 4th, there's a Know Your Gardens walk with a docent, and it's free. February 16th, again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, is a sunset walk with the docents. So get to know your garden. You meet at the foot of the demonstration trail just above City Hall, and you can RSVP to these at 805-798-7108 or on Facebook. So support your garden. And there are jobs. Okay, here's a job announcement. This is a news release I just got the other day. In fact, on the 17th of this month. The police are desperately recruiting police officer trainees, lateral and academy trained police officers as well. There's going to be a recruitment booth offered every single Thursday through March from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and by appointment as well at the Ventura Police Department lobby located at 1425 Dowell Drive. The Ventura Police Department is hiring police officers, trainees for the October 2017 Academy and lateral or academy trained police officers on an ongoing basis. Prides itself on hiring and retaining the most qualified individuals. It's not only extremely challenging, but it's also very, very rewarding. And as a police officer, fighting and preventing crime, protecting the innocent, and serving the community is what you do daily. But it is the individuals that they hire who are also leaders. They have courage, integrity, self-discipline, and compassion. And that's what makes the City of Ventura Police Department really great. So if you want a job, you want to also attend. There's an event. I don't know if this is rained out. This might be postponed, although, wait a second. It won't be. Oh, cool. Recruitment officers are also, in addition to that booth that's set up every single Thursday from 10 to 2 in Dowell Drive, next Saturday, the 21st, from noon to 3 at the Pacific View Mall, southwest parking lot, nearest to the McConnell's ice cream store. Applicants are invited to come out and meet the team as well. It's called Chillin' with the VPD, and this event features another K-9 demonstration, SWAT, motors, patrols, CSI, and more. So if you believe you have what it takes, I encourage you to apply for a position of police officer trainee. Or if you're a currently sworn peace officer, they encourage you to consider a lateral transfer. So you can also find more information about this on the City of Ventura.jobs or venturapd.org. Yeah, so go hang out with the police on the 21st. Have you ever done a remote radio show with the police and that type of
We're going to
event?
do their golf tournament coming up, and we've been in and around them numerous times, but I don't know if we did a police-specific remote. But we are going to do a golf tournament.
Well, be there on the 21st, next Saturday, in case you want to tell everybody that during the week. And finally, our wonderful Rubicon Theater has the third and final of a trilogy. It's the last and final chapter in the Nybrock trilogy. Everybody's been waiting. Actually, starting this Wednesday is the opening night, going through February 12th, the Rubicon Theater, 667-2900. You can save $5 per ticket. There's a special code when you call that number, 667-2900. Tell them you heard it on the Lynn Fairley and Fabulous Friend Show. It's called The Gulf View Drive. It's the third and final play in the Nybrock trilogy by Arlene Hutton. And all of you that have seen the first two, Last Train to Nybrook and Sea Rock City, I know you can't hardly wait for this to open. It's the same cast, and it's the final chapter of their story. But if you haven't seen the other two, you don't need to. You don't have to see those two to understand the final chapter. They do it so well. So starting this Wednesday at 7 p.m., get your tickets, and it goes all the way through to a matinee on the 12th. 805-667-2900. I can hardly wait because those two plays have just been marvelous. Okay, so earlier in the show when I started, I asked you, what do Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Du Bois, Albert Einstein, and Tolstoy have in common? What do you think?
Passive resistance and great hair.
Great hair. Actually, Gandhi really didn't have too much hair, but the rest of them I would say had great hair. Well, and Spence, you have great hair. All right, so what they have in common is this. Martin Luther King wrote an amazing book, A Testament of Hope, and in it are the essential writings and speeches of Martin Luther King. And although he used Christian social ethics and the New Testament concept of love heavily in his writings and speeches, he was also influenced by Eastern spiritual traditions, Gandhi's political writings, Buddhism's notion of interconnectedness of all beings, and ancient Greek philosophy as well. His enduring ethos at its core is actually non-religious. Rather, it champions a set of moral, spiritual, and civic responsibilities that fortify our humanity, individually and collectively. Nowhere does he transmute spiritual ideas from various traditions into secular principles, and more masterfully than in his extraordinary 1958 essay called An Experiment in Love, in which he examines the 6 essential principles of his philosophy of nonviolence, debunks popular misconceptions about it, and considers how these basic tenets can be used in guiding any successful movement of nonviolent resistance. So, penned 5 years before his famous letter from Birmingham City Jail, and exactly a decade before his assassination, this essay was eventually included in the indispensable A Testament of Hope. Required reading for every human being with a clicking mind and a ticking heart, in my opinion. So, in any event, here are the 6 basic philosophies. Now, why am I talking about this today? Because we're out there protesting and marching, and this has been going on for months and months and months. So this whole campaign, people have been free to voice their concerns, their opinions, and one of the things I've been thinking about all along is what's the psychology of all this, and why protest? Why resist so much? And some of you may have found yourself on one side of the resistance when Obama was campaigning, and now you've on the other side of the resistance now that your candidate Trump has won, for example. You're not out marching around with all the ladies out there in our nation. I don't want you to take your freedom for granted, that you have your voice and you can protest. That's why I spoke earlier in the show about what's the difference between protesting and rioting. Well, protesting is peaceful, and that's something Martin Luther King was always trying to aspire to. So his 6 basic philosophies address the tendency to mistake nonviolence for passivity, pointing out that it's a form not of cowardice, but of courage, actually. He says it must be emphasized that nonviolent resistance is not a method for cowards. It does, in fact, resist. If one uses this method because he's afraid or merely because he lacks the instruments of violence, he is not truly nonviolent. This is why Gandhi often said that if a cowardice is the only alternative to violence, then it's better to fight. The way of nonviolent resistance is ultimately the way of a strong man. It's not a method of stagnant passivity. For while the nonviolent resistor is passive in the sense that he's not physically aggressive toward his opponent, his mind, his emotions are always active, constantly seeking to persuade his opponent that he's wrong. The method is passive physically, but strongly active spiritually and mentally. It is not passive non-resistance to evil, it's active nonviolent resistance to evil. So that's one of the first 6 points in his philosophy. He turns to the second tenet of nonviolence, and it is, nonviolence does not seek to defeat or humiliate the opponent, but to win his friendship and understanding. The nonviolent resistor must often express his protests through non-cooperation or boycotts or marches. But he realizes that these are not ends in themselves. They're merely a means to awaken a sense of moral shame, perhaps, in the opponent. The end is redemption and reconciliation. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, while the aftermath of violence is tragic bitterness. And we've seen that a lot in this past several years in our communities. In considering the third characteristic of nonviolence, Dr. King appeals to the conscientious recognition that those who perpetrate violence are often actually the victims themselves. The attack is directed against forces of evil rather than against persons who happen to be doing the evil. It is the evil that the nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat, not the persons victimized by the evil. If he's opposing racial injustice, the nonviolent resistor has the vision to see that the basic tension is not really between the races. The tension is at the bottom between justice and injustice, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. We're out to defeat injustice and not white persons who might be unjust. So that's very, very typical Dr. King. So out of this recognition flows the fourth tenet. Nonviolent resistance requires a willingness to accept suffering without retaliation, to accept blows from the opponent without striking back. The nonviolent resistor is willing to accept violence if necessary, but never to inflict it. He does not seek to dodge jail. If going to jail is necessary, enters it, quote, as a bridegroom enters the bride's chamber. So I think we have a call. Is that right?
Yes, we're going to go back to Obamacare.
Good. Hi, who's calling?
Hi, it's Patty.
Hi, Patty. Oh, did you
Hi.
find we were looking for?
Yeah, I did because I first heard it on, it was either KFI or KNBC, and so I called Spence earlier and I said, okay, well, let me see what I can find on it. What the paragraph I'm going to read to you, this is dated, it's on Fox News, it's January 20th, and it's talking about the appeal of Obamacare. Okay, what it says is the order which noted that Trump intends to seek the law's prompt repeal directs agencies to minimize the unwarranted economic and regulatory burden of Obamacare and prepare to afford the states more flexibility and control to create a more free and open health care market, unquote. And then it says it also tells agencies to waive, defer, or delay imposing any Obamacare provisions that impose fiscal penalties on states, health care providers, families, or individuals. So what that means is Trump is putting a stop to any fines for people who are not able to buy Obamacare, which was a mandate.
Yes, it
by
was.
Obama.
Yeah, yes, it was.
So I think that's a good sign
Yeah.
and a good step.
Yes,
And that's
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We very much appreciate you taking the time to research this and call us back. It's very, very helpful because it's a question we'll have now for a few months as to, which end is up. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate you
and
listening
thank
to
you
News
for-
Talk 1590
Help us
KVTA. Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
help us all find the truth. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So we're back to Dr. King and the 6 philosophies of peaceful protest, if you will, or nonviolence. That, in fact, precisely how Dr. King himself entered into jail 5 years later. To those skeptical of the value of turning the other cheek, he offers, unearned suffering is redemptive. Suffering, the nonviolent resistor realizes, has tremendous educational and transforming possibilities. So he entered jail with this in mind, that he would learn and he would transform. The 5th basic philosophy turns the 4th inward and arrives at the most central part of the essay, the noblest use of what we call love. Nonviolent resistance avoids not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. The nonviolent resistor not only refuses to shoot his opponent, but also refuses to hate him. At the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. The nonviolent resistor would contend that in the struggle for human dignity, the oppressed people of the world must not succumb to the temptation of becoming bitter or indulging in hate campaigns. To retaliate in kind would do nothing but intensify the existence of hate in the universe. Along the way of life, someone must have sense enough and morality enough to cut off this chain of hate. This can only be done by projecting the ethic of love to the center of our lives. And I'm hoping that it seems like Patty and I are the only 2 females not out there marching today, but I'm hoping that this is heard. And I may run this show again, because it's a lot to listen to. Here, Dr. King turns to the ancient Greek philosophy, pointing out that love he speaks of is not the sentimental or the affectionate kind. It would be nonsense to urge men to love their oppressors in an affectionate sense, he readily acknowledges, but love in the sense of understanding and redemptive goodwill. Now, the Greeks called this agape, a love distinctly different from eros, reserved for our lovers, or philia, which is what we feel for our friends and family. Now, Dr. King explains, agape means understanding, redeeming goodwill for all men. It's an overflowing love which is purely spontaneous. It's very unmotivated, groundless, and incredibly creative. It is not set in motion by any quality or function of its object. It is actually kind of disinterested love. It is a love in which the individual seeks not his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people or any qualities people actually possess. It begins by loving others just for their sakes. In its entirety, quote, neighbor regarding concern for others, which discovers the neighbor in every man it meets. Now, I think I would like to live next door to Spence because I think he's a good neighbor. I think he'd be an awesome neighbor, as a matter of fact. And he's concerned with his neighborhood. Isn't that true? Yes, that's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. And I think he does possess this quality, this sort of neighbor regarding concern for others, and does discover the neighbor. He feels like a neighbor, actually. Therefore, agape makes no distinction between friends and enemies. It's directed toward both. If one loves an individual merely on account of his friendliness, if he loves him for the sake of the benefits to be gained from the friendship, rather than for the friend's own sake, consequently, the best way to assure oneself that love is disinterested is to have love for the enemy neighbor, from whom you can expect no good in return, but only hostility and persecution. Now, I have a neighbor like that. I try not to fight and try to see the good in her. But it's been a challenge. I'm learning that lesson myself. I am a good neighbor. So we have another call?
Yes, we do have Robin.
Robin, hey, Robin, wow. You and Patty and I are the only three out there not marching.
I guess so. I'm not feeling very good today. I don't know if I'd go out and protest. My heart would be with them, but
Oh,
I know. I called for one to let you know today is Saturday the 21st, so maybe if people want to go chill at the BPD, they should get over there and write.
thank you very, very
You're
much.
welcome.
You know, I was confused as I
Yeah.
was reading that. I kept thinking for some reason it was the 14th.
I
Thank
know.
you very much, Robin.
And also,
Cool.
it's pretty cool that these departments are starting to hire police again. Now, I know where Ventura got their money. They just passed that sales tax thing.
Right.
But Oxnard, I think, is hiring as well, and I don't know where they got their money because they're still pretty much broke over there, but I believe they're hiring as well.
The state. They got a little bit of a bailout from the state because they very much need law enforcement there.
Well, I know.
more
I don't know if
than
Wainimi
ever.
got a bailout. We could use a few more officers here in Wainimi, but I think it's good that some of these agencies are starting and are able to hire police officers again.
Well, it's awesome that I've got two ladies today helping me out with my show.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you, Robin, for that. Go over to the Pacific Mall, join the chillin' with the Ventura PD and see their canine companions. It's a very cool thing to do. Thank you, Robin, for
Okay, I'll
calling,
talk to you in a
and
couple
thank you
weeks,
for
Lynn.
listening. You bet. Thanks a lot. All right, so this notion is nearly identical to one of Buddhism's four brahmiviharas, or divine attitudes, the concept of metta, often translated as loving kindness or benevolence. The parallel speaks not only to Dr. King's extraordinarily diverse intellectual toolkit of influences and inspirations, a high form of creativity necessary for any meaningful contribution to humanity's common record, but also to the core commonalities between the world's major spiritual and philosophical traditions, which is why I asked you what all these folks have in common. King, Tolstoy, Albert Einstein, Du Bois, in a sentiment that Margaret Mead and James Baldwin would echo 12 years later in their spectacular conversation on race, quote, in any oppressive situation, both groups suffer, the oppressors and the oppressed. Mead observed, asserting that the oppressors suffer morally with the recognition of what they're committing, which Baldwin noted is a worse kind of suffering. And Dr. King added, another basic point about agape is that it springs from the need of the other person, his need for belonging to the best in the human family. Since the white man's personality is greatly distorted by segregation, remember Dr. King's writing this, and his soul is greatly scarred, he actually needs the love of the Negro. The Negro must love the white man because the white man needs his love in order to remove his tensions, his insecurities, and fears. That's an amazing concept, really. At the heart of agape, he argues, is the notion of forgiveness, something Mead and Baldwin also explored with great intellectual elegance. And finally, Dr. King writes, agape is not a weak, passive love. It's a love in action. Agape is a willingness to go any length to restore your community. It is a willingness to forgive, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 to restore your community. If I respond to hate with reciprocal hate, I do nothing but intensify the cleavage broken in my community. I can only close the gap in broken community by meeting hate with love. With this, he turns to the sixth and very final principle of nonviolence as a force of justice, undergirded by the non-religious form of spirituality that he elegantly termed an animating presence and describes as the transcendence of the strange and shimmering world. He writes, nonviolent resistance is based on the conviction that the universe is on the side of justice. Consequently, the believer in nonviolence has deep faith in the future. This faith is another reason why the nonviolent resistor can accept suffering without retaliation. for he knows that in his struggle for justice he has cosmic companionship. It is true that there are devout believers in nonviolence who find it very difficult to believe in a personal God. But even these people believe in the existence of some creative force that works for a universal wholeness. Whether we call it an unconscious process, an impersonal Brahman, or a personal being of matchless power of infinite love, there is a creative force in this universe that works to bring the disconnected aspects of reality into a harmonious whole. A Testament of Hope is absolutely an essential read in its totality. Now complement that read with Albert Einstein's little known correspondence with Du Bois on racial justice. I didn't know Albert Einstein wrote about racial justice. Tolstoy and Gandhi's equally forgotten but immensely timely correspondence on why we hurt each other. If you want to know more about this, I picked this up off of something called Brain Pickings that I'm really, really interested in lately. It's free. It's Brain Pickings, all one word, brain, P-I-C-K-I-N-G-S, pickings.org. You can pick up all kinds of interesting information, such as this and more, on brainpickings.org. So that's what they have in common. Finally, I'm going to read you Obama's letter that was left on his desk. This is a tradition in the White House. Every president leaves, when he walks out of the White House for the very last time, leaves a letter on the very center of his desk for the next president. And I printed it up. It was on originally the White House stationery and all that. Okay? And here's what he had to say. My fellow Americans, it's a long-standing tradition for the sitting president of the United States to leave a parting letter in the Oval Office for the American elected to take his or her place. It's a letter meant to share what we know, what we've learned, and what small wisdom may help our successor bear the great responsibility that comes with the highest office in our land and the leadership of the free world. But before I leave my note for our 45th president, I want to say one final thank you for the honor of serving you as your 44th. Because all that I've learned in my time in the office, I've learned from you. You made me a better president, and you made me a better man. Throughout these 8 years, you have been the source of goodness, resilience, and hope from which I pulled strength. I've seen neighbors and communities take care of each other during the worst economic crisis of our lifetime. I have mourned with grieving families, searching for answers, and found grace in a Charleston church. I've taken heart from the hope of young graduates and our newest military officers. I've seen our scientists help a paralyzed man regain his sense of touch, and wounded warriors once given up for dead walk again. I've seen Americans whose lives have been saved because they finally have access to medical care, and families whose lives have been changed because their marriages are recognized as equal to our own. I've seen the youngest of children remind us through their actions and through their generosity of our obligations to care for refugees or work for peace, and above all, to look out for each other. Does that sound familiar? Dr. Martin Luther King. I've seen you, the American people, in all your decency, determination, good humor, and kindness, and in your daily acts of citizenship. I've seen our future unfolding. All of us, regardless of party, should throw ourselves into that work, the joyous work of citizenship. Not just when there's an election, not just when our own narrow interest is at stake, but over the full span of a lifetime. I'll be right there with you every step of the way, and when the arc of progress seems slow, remember, America is not the project of any one person. The single most powerful word in our democracy is the word we. We the people, we shall overcome. Yes, we can. Barack Obama. This is the letter he left on his desk in the tradition, as every other president has before him, for our new president to read. And I thought I would share that with you today after my long dissertation on the 6 philosophies of nonviolence love by Dr. Martin Luther King. As always, I really very much appreciate you listening and calling. Spence, thank you very much for producing my show. And he's picked out a song, something that I wanted to hear from, anything really. I wanted to hear from Ravi Shankar because we were talking about Gandhi. All right, stay tuned to Newstalk 1590 KBTA. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and stay warm and dry in the next couple of days.